Welcome to the What If podcast, where we challenge everything we think we know about reality. Today, we're diving into one of the most mind-bending ideas out there, the simulation hypothesis. Imagine for a moment that every sensation, every thought, and every moment of your life is nothing more than a sophisticated computer simulation, an elaborate program running on an advanced, perhaps post-human, supercomputer. This provocative theory, popularized by Nick Bostrom in his 2003 paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?, suggests that if future civilizations ever gain the power to simulate conscious beings, the number of simulated realities could far outnumber what we consider real ones. In this episode, we'll trace the philosophical roots of this concept, from Plato's allegory of the cave to the cutting-edge advances in AI, virtual reality, and quantum computing that make the idea seem less like science fiction and more like a possibility. We'll explore intriguing scientific hints, like the potential pixelation of space-time at the smallest scales and the observer effect in quantum mechanics, which some argue resemble computational shortcuts in a digital world. So get ready to question your very existence as we ask, is reality just code? Stay tuned as we embark on a journey through philosophy, physics, and the future of technology to explore this fascinating hypothesis. So let it dive to the podcast.
Ever feel like you're living in a movie? Like, what if it's more like a video game?
A video game, huh?
Yeah, but like a really advanced one.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Like we're all just characters in some crazy simulation.
The simulation hypothesis.
Exactly. That's what we're going to be diving into today. All the arguments and all the crazy implications. It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting how this idea that was once, just science fiction is now being taken seriously by some physicists and philosophers.
Right now it's like the Matrix is real.
Well, not quite, but the idea that our reality could be a digital creation made by like a super advanced civilization, definitely captivating.
Totally. Okay, so where does this whole wild theory even come from?
Well, the simulation hypothesis actually has roots going way back.
Okay.
Like ancient philosophy.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, think Plato's allegory of the cave. You familiar with that?
Kinda. Remind me.
So it's basically about how our perceptions of reality could just be like shadows of a truer, more real reality that's out there.
Okay, I see.
Imagine like prisoners chained up in a cave. They only see shadows on the wall and they think that's the real world.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that now.
That's the kind of disconnect the simulation hypothesis suggests.
So we could be like those prisoners, totally clueless about what's actually real. But how does this old idea, connect to us today?
Well, as our technology gets more advanced, especially with things like AI and virtual reality, even quantum computing.
Right, all that crazy stuff.
It makes the idea of creating hyper-realistic simulations seem more and more likely, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If we're already close to making super lifelike virtual worlds, just imagine what a civilization thousands, maybe even millions of years ahead of us could do.
Yeah, that's a good point. But okay, is there anything beyond just speculation? Any actual hints that we might actually be in a simulation?
Well, no definitive proof yet, but there are some interesting clues that have kind of fueled this whole debate.
Okay, I'm all ears.
You've heard of the philosopher Nick Bostrom.
Vaguely.
Well, he has this really compelling argument called the trilemma. He basically says, if advanced civilizations are capable of creating these simulations, then one of three things has to be true.
Okay, lay it on me. What are the options?
Option one, civilizations that could make simulations never actually reach the point of doing it.
Like they destroy themselves first or something?
Yeah, exactly. Or hit some limit we don't even know about.
Okay, what's number two?
Two is that they could create them, but they just choose not to.
Why wouldn't they?
Who knows? Ethical reasons, maybe? Boredom? It's all hypothetical.
Right. Okay, and option three, this is the juicy one, right?
This is the one that gets people excited. Option three is, well, we're already in one.
Whoa. So if we think it's at least possible for a civilization to get to that level of tech, then the odds are pretty good we're already simulated. That's kind of mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it?
Okay, but what about the actual universe? Are there any physical signs that maybe, just maybe, point to simulated reality?
That's a great question. And some physicists think there might be.
Like what?
Well, think about the structure of the universe itself.
Okay.
So there are these theories in quantum gravity that propose space-time might be pixelated, like a digital image, but at the Planck scale, which is the smallest possible unit of measurement.
Wait, so you're saying
It's like the universe is built on a grid.
like one massive cosmic JPEG?
Yeah, something like that.
That is seriously mind-blowing.
And then there's the whole observer effect thing in quantum mechanics.
Okay, remind me about that one.
It's the idea that just by observing something, you can change how it behaves.
Right.
Right.
Like the particles know you're watching.
And some people think that could be like how simulations work. They only render the details when they're being observed to save processing power.
Oh, I see. Kind of like how in a video game, only the stuff you can see is rendered in full detail, right?
Yes, the idea.
Okay, so maybe it's not like proof, but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, it's pretty intriguing, isn't it? Kind of like how a video game doesn't bother rendering everything in the background, right? Just focuses on what you're looking at.
Right, right. Clever. Okay, but I gotta ask about something that's always bugged me, the Mandela effect.
Ah, yeah.
Does that fit into all of this? You know, where tons of people all have the same false memory.
It's a fascinating thing, for sure, but its connection to the simulation hypothesis, it's really just speculation.
Yeah, I figured.
While it's fun to think about those shared memories, like glitches in the Matrix or something.
Too thought.
It is, but memory is just, well, it's not always reliable.
True.
And there could be a whole bunch of psychological and social reasons that explain why people remember things differently.
Okay, so maybe not hard evidence, but definitely something to think about.
Exactly. And it's important to remember, just because something's weird or we don't understand it,
Right.
doesn't automatically mean it's proof of a simulation.
Good point. But what about the flip side? Are there arguments against the simulation hypothesis?
Absolutely. And some of them are pretty strong.
Okay, I'm listening.
One of the biggest hurdles is just the sheer computing power it would take to simulate an entire universe, down to like the tiniest subatomic particle.
Yeah, that's a lot of processing power.
It's mind-boggling. Like, even our most powerful supercomputers today, they have trouble simulating relatively simple systems.
So an entire universe.
It's like almost impossible to imagine, even with crazy advanced tech.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it'd be like, what, a computer the size of a galaxy or something.
Maybe bigger, who knows?
So maybe it's just too much, even for a super advanced civilization.
And then there's the argument that bringing up a simulation to explain everything,
Yeah.
it might be a little too complicated, you know?
Overthinking it.
Yeah, it kind of goes against Occam's razor, this idea that the simplest explanation is usually the best one.
Okay, so sometimes a universe is just a universe. Keep it simple.
Exactly. Maybe there's no need for some elaborate simulation.
I can get behind that. And plus all the physics we know right now,
Right.
like relativity, quantum mechanics, all that.
Uh-huh.
It explains how the universe works pretty well, even without the simulation idea.
Yeah, that's true. We've come a long way in understanding the cosmos.
Okay, so no undeniable proof for the simulation hypothesis yet. But let's play devil's advocate here. What if we are in a simulation? What would that mean for our lives, for how we understand reality?
Ah, now that's when things get really interesting. The implications of a simulated reality, well, they touch on some pretty deep questions about our existence.
So break it down for me. What are the big questions this brings up?
Well, first off, it brings up some huge ethical concerns.
Like what?
Well, if we are simulated beings, who's responsible for us? I guess you could call them the simulators, do they have any obligation to, like, take care of us?
Oh, wow. It's like, if you create a simulation, are you responsible for the beings inside it? Or are they just lines of code?
Exactly. And what if they decide to, end the simulation, pull the plug? What happens to us?
Poof, we're gone.
Maybe. This whole idea really makes you question free will, too.
Yeah, how so?
Well, if everything we do is predetermined by the code, by the program running the simulation,
Right.
do we really have any choices? Or are we just playing out a script?
Whoa, that is a heavy thought.
Yeah.
Like, do our choices even matter in a simulated world?
Yeah, it's deep stuff. But there could be positive implications, too.
Really? Like what?
Imagine if we could figure out how the simulation works.
Like crack the code?
Yeah, we might be able to manipulate it, bend the rules of physics, even escape the simulation and get to the real world.
Now that sounds like something out of a movie. Like hacking reality.
Exactly. But thinking about it more philosophically, does life have less meaning if it's all just, ones and zeros? Or could knowing we're in a simulation actually give us a whole new perspective?
Yeah, it's a tough one. On the one hand, you could feel like, well, none of this really matters if I'm just a virtual being.
Right.
But on the other hand, maybe understanding the simulation could be like incredibly empowering, like leveling up our consciousness,
I think you're onto something there.
Maybe it's not about the answer, but about the journey of exploring these ideas.
And that journey, even if we never definitively prove or disprove the simulation hypothesis,
Yeah.
it could lead to some amazing technological advancements.
How so?
Think about it. Trying to figure out if we're in a simulation pushes the boundaries of what we know about computing, about physics, even about consciousness itself.
So it's valuable even if we never get a straight answer.
Exactly. Even if it turns out the simulation hypothesis is wrong, just trying to figure it out could lead to breakthroughs that benefit humanity in a million different ways.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So where does all this leave us after taking this deep dive into the simulation hypothesis? It feels like more questions than answers.
It's true. The simulation hypothesis is still a huge debate with strong arguments on both sides. But in the end, we don't have any real proof to say for sure either way.
So it's a mystery still waiting to be solved.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But it's a pretty fascinating one, right? It makes you question everything you thought you knew about reality itself. It really does make you think, like, what if we could prove we were living in a simulation? Would we even want to know?
I don't know. It's kind of scary, right?
It is. And then think about this.
Okay.
What if someday we are the ones creating the simulations?
Whoa.
What kind of responsibility would we have to the beings inside?
Oh, man. That's a whole other level. Like, it's not just about US being in a simulation anymore.
Right. It's like the simulation hypothesis. It doesn't just make you question reality. It makes you question morality, ethics, like everything.
It's almost like a choose your own adventure, but for like existence.
That's a good way to put it. The choices, both as simulated beings and D as potential simulators, they could have huge consequences. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is, but that's what makes it so interesting, right? It forces you to think beyond what you see every day.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we don't know everything. About the universe, about ourselves, about anything, really.
And who knows? Maybe searching for these answers, it'll lead us to discoveries that are even crazier than the simulation hypothesis itself.
That's true. There could be even bigger mysteries out there.
Exactly. That's the beauty of science and philosophy. They keep pushing us to learn more.
Well said. So for anyone listening who's like totally hooked on the simulation hypothesis now, what should they do? Where should they go from here?
I'd say keep digging. Read more about the arguments
Right.
for and against.
Okay.
Check out philosophers like Nick Bostrom, physicists who are working on quantum mechanics and cosmology, all that cutting-edge stuff.
So like hit the books, basically.
Yeah, but most importantly, just keep asking questions.
Don't let that curiosity die.
Exactly. Even if we never find out for sure if we're in a simulation or not, the journey of exploring these ideas, it's worth it. It's all about the journey, not the destination, right?
Something like that.
Right.
And hey, maybe someday we'll be the ones building those super realistic simulations.
And then the beings inside them will be having the same conversation.
Wow, that's a crazy thought. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the simulation hypothesis. It's been a wild ride.
It has.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those imaginations running wild.